That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. I guess we'll start with talking about the budget. We're going to find out in a few minutes from now what is in this new budget. But, you know, it was interesting to hear, and I guess he had a fair point yesterday, Paul St. Pierre Plamondon suggesting, what does this budget really mean? Because in 3 weeks from now, there'll be a new premiere. Is this all out the window by then?
Absolutely. And what's crazy here is, if you've been listening to the show for the past half hour, you've been talking about uncertainty, whether it's in employment, whether it's in the economy, which way things are going. Right now, if you have interest in the market, you're not crying tears of blood if you're holding on to energy shares, but you are if you're holding on to damn near anything else. And the fact is that usually we would look at a government budget, even at the provincial level, as being some kind of a waypoint, some kind of a point of reference for people to say, okay, A, B, and C is going to happen, therefore I know, this is the way the economy is going to go. You don't have that at all. You could do the next half hour asking listeners what they think the budget should be, and it would be absolutely as germane as anything that Éric Girard is going to say. April 12th, 20,000 people, a little over 20,000 people will choose the next Premier of Quebec. It'll either be Bernard Dranville, Christine Fréchette, and we have sort of an idea of what they want to do, but we don't really know. And they can come in, and as Monsieur St. Pierre Plamondon quite rightly pointed out, they can rewrite that thing from top to bottom. They can make today's exercise a complete waste of time, which is, of course, the last thing on earth we need. But, it's one thing to have a lame duck premier like Francois Legault, who, by the way, I don't know if you play along at home there, Aaron, but the Angus Reid Premier Approval Poll came out for March of. He's still at the bottom of the list, and he went up 1 point, but he's still well below the increasingly unpopular Doug Ford at 31%. He's at 26%. But here's the thing: everything is lame duck. It's like nothing matters, which of course is crazy because everything should matter. This is, as I say, a blueprint for our economy, a blueprint for which way Quebec is going to go, theoretically for the next 12 months. And honestly, it's not even going to last for the next 4 weeks. We're going to have a different point of view, a different position. So God help us all. What's going to be announced? As you say, don't expect any checks, but you know what? I don't expect any tax hikes either. Because you could also accuse. If he throws them in, you can accuse Girard of perhaps handing some ammunition to these leadership candidates to turn around and say, oh, no, I'm going to cut taxes right then and there. And I'm sure the opposition would seize upon that. But this is where we are. This is how weird things have become in Quebec, how surreal things have become in Quebec. And as I speak to you, and for the time being at least, and no matter how those numbers may change down the road, the apparent government in waiting to take over from this limping and quacking government of the Coalition Avenir Québec, the first thing on their agenda is another referendum on sovereignty. So sit back and enjoy the ride, folks. It's going to be an interesting 2026.
By the way, worth noting, right, we've had already promises made by the candidates, Christine Fréchette making a couple of them, which involve spending money, none of which will be accounted for in this budget because she is not the premier for another, 3 weeks.
Yeah, and there are also suggestions. I mean, she's I don't know if you saw her statement over looking for gas now, fracking for gas and so on, which is a very frowned upon practice. Well, maybe we should be open to that, realizing that there may well be a bonanza. No matter what happens with Trump now, there's going to be a bonanza in terms of energy exploration and energy exploitation. And I'm sure whoever winds up, at least in the CAQ, running the province, that will dovetail nicely with whatever Mark Carney's got to say. But in the meantime, it's all guesswork. You and I may as well be whistling Dixie here, buddy, because the bottom line here is none of this matters. And that is something, in my experience, I've never seen or covered or heard of a budget at any level, any jurisdiction, that was so theoretical, so pointless as the one we're about to hear today.
Interesting, too, because Éric Girard announced, last month it would be delayed, right? Because typically the budgets come out right at the beginning of March. Here we are 2 weeks in. He should have delayed it till the end of April, because that way at least you'd know who the premier was and what actually was going to be in the budget were they to win the election again.
And I just have, as I speak to you, my little Batman watch, because I'm hooked up to my phone. My little Batman watch just told me that apparently Monsieur Girard has announced that whereas there are no goodies apparently there will be, I guess, a surplus or whatever, a fund, some extra money in the area of about $1 billion for either Granville or Madame Frochette to play with once they become premier of Quebec, which of course should cover what? A new computer system for a ministry? I'm just throwing that out there.
Barely cover a new system.
Barely.
Listen, the other thing I wanted to talk about was this. I don't know if you heard the clip earlier on. I know we didn't have this on our list, but I'm kind of a little taken aback by this. We had the U.S. Trade Representative, Jameson Greer, say that talks, because CUSMA, right, is going to be happening, starting kind of to happen. Talks with Mexico are going very, very well. But Canada, not so good. And then I heard, I don't know if you heard J.D. Vance. Jim, did you hear him earlier in the day?
I didn't hear him today.
Okay,
no,
so J.D. Vance, because, the Gordie Howe Bridge, which has become a bit of a point of contention, right? There's still no definite date for when it's supposed to open. First, it was early 2026, now spring 2026. So he's asked about this today and used the occasion. Well, go ahead, Brian, listen to this.
The President's attitude to Canada is they are an important ally. They're an important trading partner, especially for folks in this region of our country. But Canada has taken advantage of the United States of America for far too long. And they've taken advantage of the United States in a couple of different ways. Number one, they have allowed us to subsidize their entire military, their entire security. Canada pays virtually nothing, at least until a couple of years ago, for their own security, which means we had to foot the bill for that security. Is that fair to you and your kids that you have to pay for the military of a foreign country?
What?
No. So the President of the United States said to the Canadians, number one, you guys got to take your own security more seriously. You're always going to be an ally, but why don't you have a little bit more self-sufficiency? And I think that makes complete and total sense. The second thing the President said is, if we're going to be true friends, you have to treat our workers as fairly as we've treated Canadian workers for 40 years. We have let so many people over the entire time that I've been alive take advantage of the United States of America. The President said, if you're going to apply a tariff to our goods, we're going to start applying a tariff to your goods too. It's basic fairness. And that's what we've done. And our hope with Canada, and I think we'll get there eventually, is we're going to get to a point where Canada treats our workers fairly, we treat their workers fairly, and they're going to be a true ally and a true friend, not somebody who's taken advantage of us, which is what they've done for most of my life.
Jeez. I mean, I get the boilerplate stuff about we've been taking advantage, but wow, what's your reaction to that, Jim?
Well, right off, the first impression I have is that it's clear, and anyone who's been following certainly the hijinks of Donald Trump, even over the past week, realize he is in such bad shape now that they've staffed out, parroting the usual rubbish talking points to J.D. Vance. The other thing as well, though, is that it's also very, very clear that there is a higher, an even higher level of desperation sinking into the tone coming out of the White House over the past week or so, especially with the disaster of the Iranian operation, especially with the absolute repudiation of Donald Trump and whatever his administration stands for, essentially by those parts of the world that count. I'm not talking about the famous Board of Peace. I'm sure they'll be getting on their various navies and getting into the Strait of Hormuz or not. But the fact is, the wheels are falling off big time for Donald Trump. And if you want any proof of that, look at these, and I say, I've been using the word surreal. Look at these surreal numbers from Mark Carney. I mean, the thing is, the guy hasn't really, he stood still and let Donald Trump dance around him, and his numbers have gone through the roof. The best thing that ever happened to Mark Carney and his government is Donald Trump, and I see nothing stop, especially with the statement you just played, Aaron. I see nothing changing that in the short or medium term. But I gotta tell you, it looks more and more like Donald Trump is, because he's talking about, well, maybe we'll just disengage. He's going to sound a retreat. He's got to get the hell out of Iran. He doesn't know how, so he'll blame his allies for not helping out and take his ball in his bat and go home. The fact is, this has been a disaster. The fact is, I think he is really looking for a way to weasel out, not for the honor of the military, he never gave a damn about that, but just for his own self-esteem. I don't think he's going to get away with it. So expect not just J.D. Vance, but all the other finger puppets who work for Donald Trump to turn around and begin repeating, like the good little choir boys they are, whatever the catechism is about Canada, about Mexico, about whatever. It's becoming increasingly chaotic. But once again, who is the person garnering the most benefit from this? Mark Carney. Yeah. And as I say, all he has to do is stand still.
Jim, I got to get out. I just want to understand. What am I missing here when you talk about subsidizing our military? What the hell is that about?
This has been, this whole idea. Well, I'm sure you're getting texts right now, Aaron. He's right. It's been decades. The Americans have always used, they've run bases up here. What people don't seem to remember is in those good old days of the Cold War, Canada was the buffer zone between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. So everyone just take a deep breath, whether we like it or not. And yes, they threw a lot of hardware in there, the early warning system and all that. It wasn't for Canada's benefit. It was for the benefit of the U.S. So, everyone just take a deep breath. Okay. But listen, it's easy to say. It's easy to do. And as I tell our listeners, Aaron, get used to it. You're going to hear a hell of a lot more of it over the course of this week.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Bryan Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.